A webinar participant asks, how does discovery work when your product spans multiple time zones, multiple cultures, multiple languages? Specifically, how do you conduct interviews? Okay, this is a really hard question, and I don't have a silver bullet answer, but I will share some thoughts. I do believe that if we're going to build products for people, we need to have a deep and rich understanding of who those people are and what they need. That means if I'm working on a product, I'm going to use Netflix because Netflix is in like 100 plus countries. Let's say I'm on the video player team at Netflix. I'm building one product that's being used in all these different countries. I can't interview, if I live in the United States and I only speak English, I can't interview customers in Hungary or in Spain or in Paraguay, right? Like I'm really limited in who I can do discovery with. So I can obviously do discovery with English speakers, and there's a lot of English speakers around the world. So that's one thing that I could do. Obviously, interviewing someone when they're speaking their second language is actually can be quite challenging for our participants. So that's something we have to keep in mind. Oftentimes when we work at global companies, we have global teams. I know especially for the Europeans who might be watching. I've worked with European companies where their employees come from a dozen plus countries. What's nice about that is you probably have a lot of languages represented. Now, here's the challenge. Let's say that your product manager does an interview in German, but your designer and your engineer don't speak German. Okay, well, thankfully, we live in an era where translations are virtually free. If your product has a lot of jargon, translations may not be 100% free because you may need real human translators, but it's still fairly low cost. So language we're getting better at, but in an ideal world, we still want a native speaker of the language interviewing a participant in their native language. That's the ideal. We can't always approach the ideal. Sometimes we have to interview someone in their second language. Sometimes we might need a translator. Sometimes we might need to just translate the transcript after the fact. This is where I'm going to remind you that something is better than nothing. So you may not be able to get to the perfect solution. Do the best you can. When we're talking about time zone differences, this is tough. I'm a big believer in good quality of life. I believe in working hard, but I also think we should sleep during sleep time. And I think we should spend time with family during family time. And I think we should have hobbies and a life outside of work. But I think the reality is, if you're learning about a customer in a faraway region, the product team has to take the hit on the time zone difference. That means if your customer's working day or the time that's most convenient for them to be interviewed is during your evening, the product team has to take the hit and do the interview in their evening. Now, maybe you decide you're only going to do one interview every week or one interview every other week, whatever is sustainable for you given that time slot. But I think it's the product team that has the need, and it's the product team that has to take the hit, unfortunately, on the time zone difference. Cultural differences are really tough as well. I know, especially in an interview, we can sort of step on our own feet if we're not aware of cultural differences, especially across countries, especially across regions. Depending on what you're interviewing about, there might be some really sensitive cultural differences. I think the key is a couple things. One, do your homework. There's some good books on cultural differences. I can recommend the Culture Map. Learn about your target markets and those cultures. I mean, you have access to the entire internet. Like there is a possibility to lay your foundation of understanding that culture. If you have people from that culture in your personal network, learn from them. And then the other thing I would do is I would be really upfront with your interview participant about your culture and where you're from, and to be curious about their culture and to ask them to please tell you if something goes amiss. And something we should always be doing in our interviews is continuously seeking consent. If we ask a question and we see from the body language or from their response they don't want to answer it or that we offended them, it's our responsibility to pull back and to give them space and make sure that we're keeping our participant comfortable. So some of that is just part of our normal good interviewing practices. But I will say, like I said at the start of this video, I don't have a silver bullet. This is a genuinely hard challenge. But I do think if you're going to build for people in a region, you have to understand who those people are and what their needs are. So you got to do your best to find a way. And I wish I had a better answer. Maybe someday a product will help us with this, but I don't know of any today. If you do, if you know of any good products that help with this problem, please leave a tip in the comments. And if you work on a team that is working across cultures or time zones, or your customers speak a different language, let us know in the comments how you're addressing this. This is a very common question, and I don't have a great answer. All right, thanks.